Keeping score seems simple enough, right? You go out, you play a round of golf, and at the end of the round, you figure out what did you shoot. But for many of us, this isn't enough information to really be able to dive into how you played. And what I want to talk about in this video is how keeping score can make a very big difference in your overall performance over time, not to mention that there is more than one way to keep score, and understanding the difference between these ways that you can keep score can make a huge difference overall in your game. Okay, so the traditional way of keeping score, like we talked about, is you get your scorecard. Well, let's try a different marker. Boom. So you get your scorecard, and on that scorecard you have a bunch of different information and numbers. They're telling you how long each hole is, etc., the handicap. But typically there's, anywhere between 4 and 6 lines. Depending on the scorecard, maybe it's on the left, maybe it's on the top. And the traditional way of keeping score is that you put your name, I'll just say Joe, and then we have Bill, and we have Bob, and then we have Sue, okay? And the traditional way is, okay, at the end of the hole, Joe got a 4, Bill got a 5, Bob got a 3, Sue got a 4, okay? And you do that all the way until the end until you have a total. And this is great, and it does serve a purpose. But this classic way of keeping score is really to measure your outcome versus the course or versus another player. But this is only one way to keep score. So if we had to categorize all the different ways, this would be we'll call it number 1. This is way number 1, and we're going to call this the traditional method. Okay, and again, the traditional method is we're measuring score against the course or against other players. Okay? Now, this is great, it serves a purpose, but it's only one of many ways to keep score. Now, one of the other ways that we can keep score, and this has been taught for many years now, is to keep different metrics. And these metrics are going to help break down how you played during that round. In fact, during the benchmarking test as part of the Tour Shot Golf Academy, you measured your metrics. And these are things like, yes, we want to know your score, but we also want to know a couple of other things. How many putts did you have during that round? How many greens in regulation? How many fairways did you hit? How many sand saves? And then how many penalties did you have during that round? And again, this is a great method for keeping score because, again, most scorecards have 4 to 6 spaces, and traditionally we put each player's name. But if we want to dive a little bit deeper and understand how we really played, instead of each player's name, we put these metrics. The top line is you're going to have your score, then you're going to measure how many putts you have per round. Did you hit the green in regulation or not? If not, how many over was it? Maybe it's +1, +2, etc. How many fairways did you hit off of the tee shot? Typically out of 14, because the 4 par 3s don't count towards hitting fairways. Did you get up and down out of the sand? And then if there were any penalty shots, either out of a hazard or out of bounds, you want to track those as well. So this is kind of the metric way of keeping score. And this is a really good one because when you're understanding how you played during a round, you can understand where to focus your attention while you're playing. For example, if you know that at the end of the round, you look at your score and you say, hey, look, I shot, just making up numbers here, but I shot 76 and I had 35 putts. I hit 12 greens in regulation. I hit 6 fairways. I wasn't in any bunkers and I had no penalties. Just making some numbers up here on the spot. But if we look at this, then right off of the bat, the thing that comes to my mind is that you have too many putts. 35 putts with that kind of a score means, hey, there's an opportunity to lower that. Probably means that you were, decent On the shots that you did miss the green, if you hit 12 greens in regulation, it means you missed 6. And if you were only 4 over par, then your short game is probably pretty good. But it also means that the greens in regulation that you did hit, you probably had at least 2 putts per hole, if not higher. So that's a great way of looking at it and saying, hey, next time I practice, I'm going to spend my efforts practicing putting because that's the bottleneck preventing me from going lower with my scores. Okay, so we have the traditional method, measuring your score against the course, measuring your score against other players, and then we have a metric way. And this is understanding a little bit more about the details of your particular game. Now, that being said, there is a new way of keeping score. That's neither of these, but I think is a very beneficial way to keep score. And we're going to call this number 3. And this new way is a little bit more subjective, okay? Because you're the one that's deciding whether or not the shots you hit were in alignment with what you were trying to do. And this is where it gets really powerful. Because I'm a big believer that if our goal is to change our score, if we want to bring our score down, which most of us have that goal, then we really need to focus on the process that leads to score, not score itself, okay? Now, how this works is that every shot you take, I don't care if you go out and shoot 59 or 159, but every shot you take, that shot is either a bogey, a par, or a birdie. So how does this work? Well, this is really amazing stuff, and I want you to pay very close attention because you can implement it the very next time you go out and see results. You can even keep score these other ways, but by implementing this new subjective way, it becomes a really powerful thing. Now, here's how it works. When you're out playing, the basis of this is really your pre-shot routine and your ability to visualize the shot. Either you're going to hit the shot the way you visualized it, or you're not, okay? Now, before we go in too much further, we're going to have a small side and then we'll come back to this. And that's really how do we differentiate if it was what we were trying to make it do, okay? And that comes down to pre-shot routine. If you have a set pre-shot routine, which if you're in the Tour Shot Golf Academy, I know you do, then you're going through your routine, you're looking at the shot, okay, how far away am I, what's in between, what is my lie like, okay, where do I want to land it, what club do I want to make, okay, let's visualize that shot, let's practice that swing so that we can feel physically what we're visualizing mentally, let's go ahead, commit to that feel, and let's get ourselves lined up, let's go ahead and commit, boom, great. If you stuck to that process, you get a check mark. If you didn't stick to that process, it's an X, okay? Regardless of the outcome, and this is super important, okay? If you did not stick to your routine, it's automatically an X. It's automatically a bogey in this subjective way of playing, even if the result was good. So this X is did not commit to routine or how you visualize the shot, regardless of the outcome. Because we don't want to train ourselves to just walk up willy-nilly and hit a shot. We want to have some kind of method behind it. And again, this is a little bit subjective, which brings us to the check mark. Now, the check mark is you did go through your routine. You did commit to the visualization. But either it was a good result or it wasn't. Now, to help you out with this, because it is subjective, we want to understand what makes it, quote, a good shot or not, because golf is a game of imperfects. It's a game of who can miss the best. And it comes down to this. Every shot we hit, we can rank on a scale of 0 to 3. Okay? What are we talking about? Well, because the ball is moving in 3 dimensions in space, we're looking at distance, direction, and trajectory. For every one of these attributes that your shot had, you get a point. Okay, if it didn't have any of them, it's 0. If it had all of them, it's a 3. Well, what do I mean by that? If you have a 150-yard shot and you commit to your pre-shot routine and then you hit it and it goes 150 yards, it goes the right height, but it went off to the right, then you got a 2. You got your distance, you got your trajectory, you just didn't have direction. Okay, so this is really important because maybe the shot that you hit was still a good shot, it just wasn't the shot you were expecting. Okay, because there's going to be a time where you need a 150-yard shot with that trajectory that fades off to the right for a right-handed player. In which case, if that was the shot you were trying to hit, then it is a 3. You got all those criteria. So it's really important that we have a visualization for our shot, because then we know if we did it or not. Now, if we're on the fence and we don't know, do I do this shot or do I do this shot, how do you know which one the result was? Was it good or was it bad? And so this is where we start to rank it. Every single shot has this possibility, but the idea is you visualize the shot. You have a certain outcome that you're trying to achieve. Either it did or it did not. If you hit that 150-yard shot and it goes the right height, but it fades off to the right, the worst thing we can do is say, oh, that was a horrible shot. Because it wasn't a horrible shot. It just wasn't the shot you had expected. So we take that shot and we put it in our memory banks and we will hit it at a different time in the future when that's the shot that we need. So in that case, it faded to the right, you got a 2 out of 3, that shot was a par, okay? Now, even if you only got 1 out of 3, even if you got 0 out of 3, it's still a par because you committed to your process, to your pre-shot routine, to what you were visualizing. Now, when you get a 3, when it all comes together, you visualized a shot, you committed to that routine, and all these criteria were met, that's when it becomes a birdie. Now, how we keep score is very similar to this traditional way, or even the metric way, where we're using all 6 of these boxes. Shot 1, shot 2, shot 3, shot 4, shot 5, shot 6. Okay? Now, granted, some of you might say, hey, on a par 5, I need more than 6 shots. Great, there's still space on the scorecard. Just bear with me here. This is a high-level concept that you can apply. Don't let the details of your scorecard bring you down. Think outside of the box if you need to. So shot 1, did I commit to my process? Yes. Did I get the result I wanted? No. Great. Well, then in that first box, you're going to put a 0 because it was even par. You didn't add or take away. Okay? On your next shot, now let's just say you're in the right rough and you have that 150-yard shot and you visualize it, you execute it, and boom, it was beautiful. You stuck it to 12 feet. Great, that was a birdie. So let's put -1 because you're 1 under par for that shot. And then you're super excited, you're talking to your buddies, and it's a 12-footer, and you kind of just walk up and hit it, and you make it. It's a birdie, so that must be a -1, right? No, it was a bogey. Because remember, we're not keeping score, we're ranking how well we committed to the process. And even though you made the putt, you just kind of walked up and hit it, you didn't go through your pre-shot routine, and that makes it a bogey because you did not commit to your routine. So that hole, while your traditional score was a birdie, your subjective score, that was even par. Okay, we're going to do this throughout the entire round for every hole that we play. Now, if you're really going above and beyond, you can keep all of these kinds of scores in the same round. Maybe you get multiple scorecards, okay? And the traditional way is, all right, I made a birdie, and Bill over here made a bogey, so now, you know, I'm 2 up in stroke play, I'm 1 up in match play. In my metrics, I was 1 under with 1 putt. I hit my green in regulation, I missed my fairway, I didn't have a sandy, I didn't have any penalties, so you can track those metrics. But then there's the subjective way, which is saying the first shot I committed to my routine, wasn't the best shot, no problem, that's a par. Then I did commit to my pre-shot routine, and I hit it great, that's a birdie. And then I did not commit to my pre-shot routine, and I got a bogey, even though I made it. So there are 3 very different ways of keeping score, and they each have their benefits, and they each allow us to see the way that we're playing in a completely different lens. Okay? By understanding when to do each of these different scorekeepings, you will have a better idea of what to work on, how to track your progress, and you have a really big picture of what you did well and what you didn't. And I promise you that by focusing on your routine, the score will come. By focusing on your routine, the metrics will fall in place. By focusing on your routine, you will have more fun while you're playing because it takes a lot of the extraneous stress off of the round. So next time you go out and play, just remember, yes, there is a traditional way of keeping score, but it's not the only way. There is a massive time and place to keep track of your metrics over time so that we understand which area of your game needs your focus. But then within each of these metrics, we have the opportunity to break it down into a subjective way of looking at it. So if we had to break it down, the traditional way is very big picture. It's only one thing. What was the result? The second one, our metrics way of keeping score, is a little bit more zoomed in. How did we get to that result? How did we get to the final score? Where did we spend most of our strokes? And the third way of keeping score is the most zoomed in because it's each and every single shot, regardless of where it was on the course. And then we know how well we committed to that process. So sometimes we need to zoom all the way in to have a better understanding of what's happening when we zoom out.